Hello and welcome to the New Moon Tarot reading for Monday the 20th of July. So I'm going to just do a little intro for those of you who don't know how I work. I work much more with an inward focus, an archetypal focus, a focus on the principle of individuation, which is a word coined around Jungian analysis or Jungian psychology, which is the idea of breaking away from the group, from group thinking, from family, from influences, anywhere where you are not living the life that you feel drawn to live. In other words, to become fully yourself and fully a whole person. And that's work that never ever ends. It's just something that keeps continuing. We never reach a state of wholeness, but it's something towards which we can strive. And it is summed up with Carl Jung's wonderful saying that I would rather be whole than good. And I know that for some people that can sound a little bit confronting, and perhaps for some it may sound a little bit, I don't know, unsettling. But I strongly believe that the idea of wholeness rather than goodness is really what we're striving for. And one of the reasons why I think that it's something that's incredibly important, and particularly now, is that when we suppress or hold down an aspect of ourselves, and we may do this deliberately, we may try and be good, we may do this unconsciously. In other words, there is an aspect of ourselves that we are so unaware of, which is what Jung would term the shadow, that we have all of these defense mechanisms that we can bring to bear to keep that part of us hidden. And when that part of us is hidden, then we in some way are conforming to a particular sort of standard that we have set for ourselves, whether we've set that deliberately or whether we have had that set for us by the institutions, including families in which we grow up in, the governments or the politics in which we were raised, even the work and the colleagues who surround us, our friendship groups sometimes. All of those things can contribute to a sense of needing to toe a particular line and needing then to keep other aspects of ourselves out of the picture, and out of the picture as far as our own awareness is concerned as well. And the problem with that is it sets up a sort of psychic sense of stress. And when I say psychic, I mean of the psyche. I don't mean necessarily anything woo, though some people do think that this is woo, but there you go. So it sets up a sort of sense of psychic stress because what will happen is that aspect, or those aspects of us that remain in the unconscious, that remain out of sight, the stuff that we've tucked away in the closet, then come out sideways. They come out unexpectedly, and sometimes they can come out as the opposite. So in order to defend against it coming out, we can run in the other direction. Hence the idea of extremism, the idea of one-sidedness, the idea of splitting. And I'm seeing splitting going on in the world all over the place at the moment, and also in myself. This is good, that is bad. This is right, that is wrong. That person is worth listening to, that person is not worth listening to. This person is, and I mean that when I say worth listening to or not worth listening to, I mean all the time. Once somebody said something that we feel threatened by or we feel affronted by, then that person is written off entirely, completely, and anything that they say will be consigned to that same kind of one-sidedness. It will be anything that I don't want to listen to, anything I don't want to acknowledge, I don't want to hear. And that kind of splitting means that there is something that is then in the unconscious that is disrupting our behaviors, that will break through into the psyche, and that will certainly manifest in the defense mechanisms that I said I was talking about there. So splitting, one of them; projection, where you put what's inside you onto somebody else so that you don't have to own it; transference, where you bring a member of your family, for example, in your memory, and you put that onto another person because they remind you of them; denial, that speaks for itself; suppression, repression, anything that we push down. All of these things, and reaction formation, that I'm seeing a lot. all of these things that where we march against a particular or for a particular cause, while secretly actually identifying with the thing against which we are marching. So these things are all really useful to get to know in the world of the psyche, in the world of understanding our own behavior, where we fit in the world and how others are, our interactions. But these also underpin the readings that I do. And even if I don't refer to these things directly or overtly, they are there and informing the reading all the same. That sense of striving towards wholeness through individuation is that sense of dealing with the defenses, bringing what's hidden out into the open, acknowledging that we are good, bad, and ugly. You know, acknowledging that perhaps sometimes what we throw out onto somebody else is actually something that we have disconcertingly found that we have, you know, that we own, that it's ours. But because we can't do that, then what we do is that we go and accuse somebody else of it, and then we can then banish that person from our lives, and hopefully that nasty thing that's inside us will just stick with that person as they fuck off out the door, and then we don't have to deal with it. Which is of course not the case, because as soon as that person's left, then there is that creeping feeling that perhaps something isn't quite as right after all, and that maybe then we need to go and pick another battle with somebody else. So yes, this is, as I said, although not overtly stated in a lot of my readings, really underpins it. This psychological structure to the way that we interact, and the psychological underpinnings of how and who we are, and how it is that we can start to own ourselves, whatever that is, because the reading doesn't tell you who you are. The reading can't do that. The process of discovery is yours and yours alone. You, I'm sure, will be faced with many situations when you were growing up, now, where people told you who you were, or people told you who you should be, to the point where you've internalized them, and perhaps you are living to a certain extent, whether a little, whether a lot, a life that isn't actually your own. And this is about really coming back to a life that is your own, which is an odyssey. It is the great work. This is not something where you pronounce that I'm going to live my own life and then it happens. That's the beginning of the journey. That's the fall. That's stepping out onto the path of the unknown, not knowing where it's going to take us. So that, and I haven't really spoken about that much before at the beginning of readings. I've referred to it every now and then, but I thought that maybe a bit of an introduction would be great. And what I'll do is I'll timestamp this, so that if you know all about this, or you don't particularly want to know about this, then you will you can skip straight through to the reading. And mind you, if you've listened to that, you haven't. So I don't know. That's a bit beside the point. So the way that I do readings, 3 cards, what the foundation, what you're bringing in to the reading. In other words, something that has already happened but is playing a significant part, or will be playing a part in what is going to be happening, which is the 2nd card, which is the current weather. It's something that we're all going to be encountering collectively and individually for the next over the next 4 weeks, and then will have its influence far beyond that time. And then the final card, the 3rd card, is the agency card, the tool card, the card where you are given something where you can act upon your circumstances, so that you can interact in a way that is meaningful, that's personally meaningful, given your foundation and given the circumstances that you're facing. So I am now going to, I've shuffled the cards, I'm now going to cut the deck, and as always, I read along with you. I haven't had a peek at the cards, so whatever is going to be coming up is going to be coming up spontaneously. And so this is the foundation card. This is what you are bringing in. And that is the Queen of Discs. Let me pull that out. There we go. I'm hoping this focus works. I'm going to have to keep tapping the camera because I need to work out how to use this properly. So the Queen of Discs is what is has already happened, is in the process of happening, is in terms of immediate influence fading, but not fading out of sight, but fading into the background, and will sort of be the bass note of what's going to be going on in the, in your life, and how it's going to interact with the current circumstances. So in terms of the Queen of Discs, she is she's the senior member of the court card. So this means, and we were talking about individuation, that at her highest aspect, she is the individuated feminine or yin aspect of discs. Let me just explain that a little bit more. So yin, feminine, it's difficult now to separate gender from sex. But when I say feminine, I don't mean female. We all have feminine, we all have yin qualities. And these, and particularly actually with the Queen of Discs, it's a receptive quality. That's not passive, it's receptive. It's passive in as much as it isn't active and going out and doing, but it is receptive as in a net that catches what is around. In other words, able to stay in one place and be aware of the web of everything. And in fact, the Queen of Discs is in a way quite spider-like, because discs are to do with the material reality. Some people think, they're money and it's things, but it's actually to do with anything tangible. Anything, discs is this world in which we live. And the Queen of Discs sits there at the center of her web and is able to feel what is going on around her, depending on the wind vibrating through an aspect of the web, an insect flying past, one flying into the web. She's got her legs out and feeling the very, very fine vibrations of life. So the Queen of Discs is receptive. She is connected with the earth. She is embodied. She is, and when I say embodied, I mean that she isn't just simply, I see a lot of people going around the world as if they're sort of heads, just not connected to the rest of their bodies. They don't seem to be particularly aware of their bodies, and they only seem to be aware of them when something goes wrong. And but an embodied person is the whole person. In other words, it's the sort of a sort of mind-body unit working as a whole. And the Queen of Discs, in a way, lives this out. It's mind-body, but it's not only that. It's mind-body earth. It's the body as an understanding of a lived understanding that we are connected to everything and everyone. So Queen of Discs can also refer to an earth sign, so Taurus, for example, and also is more of is the sort of earth mother. So if I were to pick any one card in the minor arcana, which this is part of, that represents or kind of tallies, but not completely, but has a sort of tally with the Empress, then it's the Queen of Discs. So Earth Mother, custodian of all things natural, and that's really how the card is summed up. And so this, as a foundation, may be you. It may be an aspect of yourself that you have discovered. It may be an aspect of yourself that you are in the process of discovering or rediscovering. It may be a person in your life who's come into your life who is the Queen of Discs in terms of how they behave. A mentoring figure could be an earth sign. But really, for me, if I were to put money on it, discs, then I would say it is an aspect of you with whom you are becoming increasingly aware, and it is calling you into a deeper engagement with and relationship with your own body and with the natural cycles of things and with nature itself. So there you go. That is the Queen of Discs, and I hope that that's come into focus now. And that is your foundation card. And then, so you take that foundation, which arguably, quite likely, is an aspect of you that is now operational in your life. And this is now what you are going to be meeting in the current weather. So here is peace, the Two of Swords. Now this immediately feels like something quite significant and a very specific kind of meaning. So for me, the Two of Swords at the moment is going to be an opportunity for you. This world has been going a little bit crazy in many corners of the earth. I'm sincerely hoping that that you have some sanity space that you have found, either where you are or within, or both, and who you're with, because that can really help to buffer the chaos that is going on around and going on outside us. When we can find a still point within, and the Queen of Discs is perfect for that, connecting with your body, perhaps meditating, perhaps gardening. I know I use gardening a lot because that's one of the things that I do to meditate, really, but the Queen of Discs really is the gardener card. When you have that Queen of Discs, then you can start to connect within, and it is able to bring you that sense of peace that the Two of Swords has there with it. However, the Two of Swords is a really specific card. This is not peace, world without end. This is not a state of permanent peace. None of the cards is permanent, but this is a very, very specific meaning to the Two of Swords, and that is safe passage. And safe passage implies that you're moving from one place to another, and it's swords, and therefore it is a mental process. So you're moving from one place in your mind to another. It's not just as simple as what you're thinking, but rather in terms of how you think. Not what you think, how you think. Maybe your beliefs, your worldview, your philosophy. It will also refer to your external circumstances to a certain extent. It may refer to your heart as well, but primarily it is a shift in perspective. And in the meantime, you are going through this safe passage. So in other words, this safe passage, this moment of peace is not it. It is the journey from one state to another. Now that journey from one state to another may feel less than peaceful. In fact, I've actually just been reading James Hollis's new book. It's right in front of me here, and it's called Living Between Worlds, and it really is about that. So I think it's bang on that that the card has come up while this is, while the book has been very fresh in my mind. But it is this state of moving between worlds. And the Two of Swords is going to be really important for you because it is a way of marking on the map where you are at the moment. This is where I am. Moving from one place to another. Safe passage. So it implies the journey isn't over. It implies that the state is temporary, and that's exactly it's exactly as it should be, given the overall picture of what's going to be going on in your life. But for the moment, it's really just an acknowledgement that this is something that you're going to be, this is what you're going to be passing through in the next 4 weeks or so, and probably the influences beyond that. So so really, what you are experiencing now is, it's so difficult to put words to it because of the liminality of it, because of the fact that you're between worlds, because of this idea that you're shifting from one place to the other. It means that something has not yet come into fruition yet. Something may not even have taken shape at all. So to put words to that is really to try and nail jello to a wall, or jelly to the wall, depending on which country you live in. But I'm going to do my best to try and explain that this is really a time when you're going to have to pull up anchors and go with it, trusting that you are moving somewhere else. There are hot air balloons in the sky in this card. They haven't yet landed. In order to rise up onto the thermals, you have to get rid of what it is that is weighing you down, and those are the anchors. It's the very things that keep you on the ground. And this is why you will need the Queen of Discs, because in that moment where you shift up onto the thermals, which can feel, I don't know if you've been in a hot air balloon, I haven't, but a light aircraft is, it's close enough for me. This Leo doesn't like being up in the air. When you're up in the air, and when you're up in the air mentally, and when you're up in the air in terms of beliefs, it can feel incredibly destabilizing. It can feel a little bit unsafe, a little bit wobbly. We can feel wobbly. And the Queen of Discs is that aspect of us within that no matter where we are, and whether we are up in a basket, high above the plains, moving from one place to the next, at the mercy in a way of a current that is working with us, but we're not sure where it's going to take us. There is an aspect of us that transcends our bodies that does know, but we don't know. And the Queen of Discs can just earth us back into ourselves at a time when we need her the most. So really, what we are going to be facing over the next 4 weeks, and again, the influence beyond that, is a state of shifting from one place to the other. It will differ for each of us. And when we are feeling like we have to cling on to something in order to feel like we are here, that we exist, that we are human beings in our bodies, that is the time to call up, to invoke the Queen of Discs, to remember that she is an intrinsic part of us. Each and every one of us, you have the Queen of Discs in you. And when you are feeling that, she is going to come to the fore. So in other words, I have a feeling, because this is foundational and it's not necessarily the tool card, but in a way she is a tool, because she is very much at the heart of things. Because she's foundational, she's the one who's going to be driving this. She is the energy that's going to be prevalent in all of this, that you can reach for, even if you feel that she doesn't exist, even if it feels wobbly up there and you're not sure where you're going, and there are currents driving you along and you don't know, and you have no idea where you're going to land because you've left something behind and you've yet to reach it. She is there. She is the ground within. So I hope that there's some sense of understanding there about a state that is not really here nor there, not really there nor here. It's somewhere else, and we are shifting through this state to get somewhere. And the tool card that you have, so this will work along with the Queen of Discs, in order to, in some way, harness favourable winds or mitigate, stormy downdrafts, is the Prince of Discs. So I hope that this has come into focus as well. If by any chance this camera is not working particularly well, then I will, because I've not got my glasses on, so I can't, everything's blurred. Then I will also put a link to the images that you can have a look at. So the Prince of Discs is your agency card, and the Prince of Discs is fantastic for this. He is basically the son of the Queen of Discs. The masculine principle, but a sort of pioneering, youthful principle. So whereas the Queen of Discs is the fully individuated adult, the Prince of Discs is the youth, not very young, but young, not the princess, not a child, but a youth. One who is keen to explore the world, to pick it apart, to draw it out, to make maps. So the Prince of Discs is the planner. There is a picture of, there's all kinds of maps and plans imprinted on his helmet, and he has this very keen ability and desire to measure things, to weigh things, to carefully and meticulously plan things out so that he can get things done. Now, this is an interesting one to work with, because the Peace card, you know, the Two of Swords, sort of implies that there is nothing really to plan yet, because you have no idea what's going on or where you're going. However, the Prince of Discs asks you to develop a sort of sense of curiosity about what's going on around you. What's going on around you in your world. This is discs, so this is your tangible world. It's not really about going and contemplating your navel and musing about life philosophies or anything like that. It is more about getting to grips with your physical lived experience, your embodied experience, trying to see what's going on, you know, lifting up the rug and looking underneath, being able to get a little bit analytical about it, but in a creative way. The Prince of Discs is nothing if not an architect. So there is that idea of being able to be not so analytical that you remove the heart and soul from anything, because that's not it. Discs are the last suit. So all of the other suits are implied in discs. It's not about analysing things in a sort of cold, steely way, but rather just getting, you know, rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty, but in a way that is both methodical and patient. The Prince of Discs is patient. Architects have to be patient. Planning a house in and of itself is a meticulous task, and that house still has to be built. So this is a planning stage, but you use the materials that you have, because you won't have everything at your disposal, because you don't quite yet know where it is that you're going to be. So this is a balancing act. It's a balancing act between this world, or the one that you've left behind. In other words, a realm of experience, a way of living, a way of seeing things, a philosophy, a worldview. And the next one, which is the worldview that is coming in, and it will be coming in the world as well. You know, what lies within, lies without. What is above is below. Everything is connected. So your shift in perspective is inextricably linked with the shifts that are going on in the world around. And this is the blessing and the curse. There is that Queen of Discs ability to connect in with everything. But then there is the individuated obligation, I feel, that we have to the self, if we choose this journey, not to identify with anything out there to the extent that we lose ourselves in it, that we lose who it is that we intrinsically are at the core of things. And it may feel lonely at times. It may feel like you are the only one there. As you can see here, you know, there are several balloons going in the same direction, but each one of them is separate in a way. And there is something here about having to maintain a sense of, we are in this together, and yet I need to preserve my integrity towards myself. And it's a big ask, because you're needing to preserve your integrity towards yourself at a time when you're not entirely sure what that looks like, what your self is. You know, what it is that you stand for, what it is that you feel is going on in the world and inside you, because you are shifting. Something feels like it's falling away. It feels like the ground is falling away beneath your feet. And it will be a while before you find ground again. But the one thing that I can tell you is it will not be the same ground. Now that can sound exciting, or it can sound scary, but one of the things I'll say to you is that this ground is more metaphorical in nature than physical, though it may be physical for some people. And it is nothing. You're leaving behind nothing that you cannot cope with. You know, in other words, there's nothing that you're leaving that you cannot live without. It may be incredibly painful to leave something behind, but it is a part of the journey, that passage through, that safe passage with the Two of Swords. So if you look at the swords on the card, what you'll see there are these two swords doing that. Now, swords of the mind, and I would say that reminds me of, you know, two aces of swords, very highly analytical ways of being, highly attuned to the mind and to sort of thought currents, the ability to be incredibly insightful. But these two swords are sort of lying opposite each other, and therefore but they're not striking each other. So there's nothing here that feels violent at all. Those swords, you know, swords can always be used for good or for ill. There's nothing violent about these swords. However, they're not connecting either in any meaningful way. So in other words, it is between those two states. But what they are providing between them is this way through. And there is, I think, a need to identify with neither of them as you move through this, because that's not what they're there for. They're not there to be identified with. They're there to show you the way to somewhere else. So yeah, it's a very different reading. I find this a different reading this month. There are some months that sort of have a similar kind of flavour to each other, and we often have cards that have appeared before, and these are new cards, which well, not new cards completely, but I mean I don't remember these ones having come up for a while, particularly the Two of Swords. And that, in a way, is in keeping with the idea of shifting out of something familiar and into something unfamiliar. There are also two court cards flanking these. So there is the idea of the Queen of Discs and the Prince of Discs. And it might also be that part of the flavour of what it is that you're shifting into is bringing the Queen of Discs as an embodied form into your life, you know, as you are embarking on this journey, this greater connection to your body, to the idea of mother nature, the web of life, and shifting then more towards the Prince of Discs, which is then a more masculine, yang, analytical, driven, motivated, and yet patient and methodical way of looking at things. So that there is this balance of yin and yang, to be able to work within the realm of the physical in a much more meaningful way, because this is, you know, these two swords are kind of suspended as you are suspended as you're moving through between these physical worlds, and so really it's this sort of very juicy idea of these, the mind and the body kind of uniting, but they can never be each other, but in some way working in a more systematic and more symbiotic way. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up over the next few weeks, both with each of you and with me, and also in the world at large. But bear in mind that this is a period of time that we are crossing something. We're moving from one place to the other. I would not make any major plans in terms of things for the next 4 weeks at least, just simply because it may be that there is something that is going on that where you think, oh well, this is where I'm going to be in terms of my, and I don't mean necessarily in the world, but I mean in terms of my thoughts, so possibly not the best time to commit to a particular sort of form of study or something like that, but rather just to bide time, because things may change even more as your ideas about yourself, about the world, are going through a process of transformation. In the same way that if you are a follower of astrology, the period between eclipses, when there's an eclipse period, is not really everything is transitory. If somebody comes into your life around the time of an eclipse, they will probably not be in your life for very long. If you decide that you want to do something at the beginning of an eclipse period, you may well come out of the eclipse period feeling that you don't really want to do that anymore, but it was a step. It was a step towards something. You just thought that that step was it, but actually it has taken you somewhere else. So it's not to say that the choices and the things that you're turning over in your mind, like the Prince of Discs, aren't worth it. That's not it at all. It's that they may just change and evolve and develop as the Prince of Discs starts sketching his plans in more detail, as this rough outline for a house starts to feel more concrete, where he may get rid of a wall somewhere and may put a second floor on somewhere else, or may build an extension, or may decide to create something new. So don't look at the rough draft and think that that's it and start building. Start refining, honing, and if you don't know what that means, then do nothing. I think that that's it. These cards are really prescriptive. I feel like it's quite prescriptive. I'm normally like, well, you could do this or do that, but it almost feels, because it's a very earthbound reading, that it is really about starting to sketch plans, but sketch them in pencil. Don't do them in ink. Have an eraser to hand and be prepared to change your mind, because it's not that the idea that you're working on isn't worth it or is in some way not legitimate. I don't believe that at all. It's just that it might just be so nascent that it is yet to, it is yet to reveal its full potential. It is yet to reveal exactly where it is that you are, and to start adding bricks and mortar and metaphorically so around a sketch is probably not the best thing, just simply because it might mean that there's more work further down the line. And rather to adopt a sort of, the Queen of Discs is very much that sort of wait and see, the mother, the idea of, 9 months until the baby is born. The Prince of Discs is much more of a doer, but yet again needs to be patient. Discs are heavy, they are dense, things move more slowly. At the moment, the mind is suspended enough to be able to shift through, so that mental volatility in the swords that normally accompany the swords, you have the ability to rather step back from that with the Two of Swords. The Two of Swords is that temporary sort of relief from the mind going a little bit crazy, particularly as we move up the swords. So the Two of Swords is the ability to suspend that and to go right, but it is at the mental level. The Two of Swords, in other words, it's like that idea of, I understand, mind, swords, that I'm moving from one place to another, and it behooves me to acknowledge that that there may be a period of uncertainty when I go through this, and things may feel wobbly, and the world may feel wobbly, and I may feel like I've lost my footing, and it may look like people around me have lost their footing as well, and I have no idea what's going on. And then, if I don't, it's to remember I have the Queen of Discs. I can go within, I can be receptive rather than aggressive, but also I can start sketching my plans, and I'm prepared to hunker down and wait until I can see more clearly. I hope that helps. If you have any questions or comments, as always, you can either email me, sarah@integratedtarot.com. You can send a comment underneath the post when I post this. But I would look forward to your feedback, and I hope this finds you all well, and I will see you next month. Take good care. Bye.